Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and in the last video we created this. We created a project where a ball will bounce around our screen. It stays contained within our game, and it interacts with the edges of our screen, or at least we've simulated interaction with the edges of our screen. Now the fun part is, even if we maximize this, we can see that, that's a problem. We might have to fix that later. So let's just play it in our native view while we're doing this project. But anyway, so now we have something moving, something doing something in our game. The next thing we want to do is we want to create a player. And actually, this is going to be a two-player game, so we're going to create two different players. But first, let's focus on creating one. So as a review, to create a new object, we're going to select the scene itself. Right-click, Add Child Node. The first thing we want is an Area 2D. We'll click Create. We're going to rename this to Paddle. Inside the paddle, we want to have a sprite. And for that sprite, we're just going to use the same icon. We'll drag that over. And then we also want a collision shape 2D. Create. Now for this sprite, let's go to our 2D view. This sprite is going to, we want it to be a paddle. So over here in our transform, we have the scale option. On the X, I'm going to scale it by 0.5. On the Y, I'm going to scale it by 2. So it's twice as tall and half as skinny. All right, and the collision shape, let's create a new rectangle shape 2D. And we'll move that over. Let's zoom in and make sure that that is around the paddle itself. And it looks good. All right, so now our paddle is set up properly. We can group this whole thing together by clicking the group, and then we can minimize. Okay, so that is one paddle. Now let's go ahead and start to program this together. So first thing we want to do is we want to set up our, hold on a second. Is it off of, let me ungroup this real quick. I moved it off of our center point, which is not good. We want to keep it locked into the center point. Notice right there, and we'll put that there as well. So that little cursor icon, or that cross, that was the center point, and I moved it off of the center point on accident. So I'm going to group it back together, and now we can move, and the center point moves with it. All right, cool. Sorry, that was a weird brain fart on my part. Okay. So now we want to set up controls. If we go to Project and then Project Settings and then Input Map, we can see that we have all of these controls. So UI Accept, UI Select, Cancel, UI Up, Down, all of these things. We want to create our own input. So we're going to say, up here in Action, we're going to say P1 underscore up and hit Enter. And that's going to create a new input command. If we click this plus button, we can choose key, meaning what key do we want to be associated with this P1 up action. So I'm going to click key, and it says press a key. I'm going to press W and click OK. That'll mean that the W key is now associated with P1 up. So then we can say P1 underscore down, Enter, and we'll say key, and we'll say S. So W and S is going to be our up and down for player one. And now that that's put together, we can actually write a script that will use those to tell the paddle to move up and down. So I'm going to click plus script. Looks good to me, and create. Okay, let's get rid of this stuff here. And let's free up our process function. Okay, perfect. So let's create a speed variable. Export var speed, and we'll say that equals, I don't know, 500, because we want our paddle to move at about the same speed as our ball. Okay. And then inside our process, our process function, let's go ahead and start creating the movement here. So let's say if input dot, which means, so input is whatever those key presses are, right? And we're going to say is, now we have some options. Is action just pressed? Is action just released? Is action pressed? Is action blocking signals? Yada, yada, yada. There's a ton of these, right? We're actually going to go with is action pressed, meaning we can hold the key down and it's going to keep doing it. If we did is action just pressed, it would be the first time we hit it, and then it wouldn't process if we just held the key down. So we want to hold it down. So we're going to say is action pressed. And we're going to say P1 underscore up. So if the P1 up action is pressed, then we're going to say move local. Now move local Y is going to be a lot like that translate function we used in the last video. But what this will do is it'll just allow us to move on the Y. We don't want to move back and forth on the X because the paddles only go up and down. So we're going to use move local Y. And we will say, negative speed times delta. Okay. So that is going to move up whenever we push up. Let's go ahead and test that. And it does. I can't move back down, but I can move up and I can move off of my screen. Let's fix that moving off of the screen thing first. So up here in this if statement, after we check to see if we've pushed the up button, we can also say, and global position dot y is less than, I don't know, let's say 60. Is 60 good? Let's see. Transform. I was close. 60. Because I knew the last one was 30 and we've increased it by 2. Let's say 60. Yeah, 60 looks about right. 60. So this is only going to run if we've pressed up and the global position is greater than 60. All right, so let's try that. Oh, I put it way too far up there. Let's change that so it's down here. Now let's test it. So it works, it works, it works. Get to the top, it won't work. I can't move any farther. So that's working. All right, so now that that's working, we can actually just copy and paste and make sure these if statements are separate, right? So it's not inside the other one. And instead of up, we want down, and we want the global position to be, let's say, greater than, or if the global position is greater than 535-ish. Yeah, 535. Okay. Alrighty, and instead of negative speed, we want positive speed delta so that we go down. All right, let's go back and reset this toward the middle, and let's hit play. So now I can go up and I'm locked, and I can go down and I'm locked. Perfect. All right, so now that paddle is working. So it should be pretty easy for us to basically duplicate. But first, we want to make sure that our ball will actually interact with the paddle. So let's do that first. So I'm going to click on the ball. And over here, notice that I have the inspector, but I also have this other tab called node. If I click node, it gives me these things, these whatever that are attached to my ball. Notice that I have signals and groups. I don't have any groups yet, so let's take a look at signals. Signals are essentially just exactly what they sound like. They're a signal that this thing has interacted with another thing in some way. So, for example, my area 2D has a bunch of signals attached to it. This area entered is the signal we're looking for, meaning the area around this object, has it entered into another object's area? If it has, we want to do something. So I'm going to double click on area entered, and it's going to ask me to connect that area to something else. Right now, I want it just the ball. I only want to worry about the ball's area, because if it interacts with any other area, I want it to do the same thing. So I'm just going to make sure that it's connecting from the ball and click connect. Now what that did was it created a new custom function inside our ball script at the very bottom that says function on ball area entered area. And what this is going to do is anytime the ball enters any other area in the game, any other object's area, it's going to do the same thing. So what we want to do is we want it to speed.x times equals -1, which basically makes it so that it bounces off of that paddle. Now notice that we've done that 3 times already. We've done it here, we've done it here, and now we've done it here. So usually whenever you're repeating things in programming, it's better to create something called a function. We already have a function here, function here, function here. We can create our own custom function. So let's create a custom function for this just by typing the word func. And I'm going to call it bounce. And inside the bounce function, we're going to say speed.x times equals -1. And then what we can do is instead of typing that, we can say bounce. Oh. And then here we can say bounce. And here we can say bounce. Because it'll clean up our code. And let's say when we bounce, we want to, I don't know, play a sound effect or something, right? Then we can add that into this function and we don't have to add it into every instance of us bouncing, if that makes sense. So now we've created this custom function. It should bounce off of our paddle. Let's go ahead and hit play and see if it does. Oh, it did. Look at that. Did you see that bounce? Well, let's try to catch it. Boom, it's bouncing. Bouncy, bouncy. Okay. So at this point, we have everything we need. We just need a second paddle. We need someone to play against. But first, we have to set up those inputs. Let's go back to our project settings, input map. Let's create a P2 underscore up and a P2 underscore down. And for up, it's going to be the up arrow. For down, it's going to be the down arrow. All right, so now we have our inputs for player 2. For the paddle, we can just right click, copy, and then select the game itself and click paste. So now we have paddle 2. The problem is we only have one paddle script and it's already doing paddle up or P1 up and P1 down. So we can actually create a new script. Let's go ahead and copy all of this. Control C. Let's create a new script. File, new script. We will call it paddle 2. And we will paste in the code from that script and we'll say P2 up, not P3, P2 down. All right. Now this paddle 2, it actually still has the P1 script attached to it. So what we can do is we can say paddle 2 and just drag it on to the paddle 2, right? So now we should have paddle 1 uses the paddle script, paddle 2 uses the paddle 2 script. So now if we play our game, we should have independent control. Uh-oh, I forgot to move my paddle 2 over to the other side. Let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to select my paddle 2 and I'm going to move it over to the other side. Try to get about the same amount of space between the edge here. Okay. So now I can move paddle 2 and I can move paddle 1. Okay. Look at that. We have a Pong game. It's actually ponging. We made Pong. Now, it doesn't look super great, and we're only using these the Godot sprite that came with it. But we've done some programming, we've done some game development, we've actually made something. You can make this better by using custom sprites. You can figure out a way to make it so that whenever we hit the edge here, it resets the game and then adds 1 to a score. There's all kinds of ways you can extend this and make it different and better. But for now, this is a good first entry project. We've created something, we can do things in the game. I think it looks pretty good. So that's about enough for this first week of actually making games. Let's make sure we save it. Oh, not save as, sorry. Let's save it. And I'm going to cut this project here. Once you get to this point, you can record your video showing me that you've actually made the project and it looks the way it's supposed to, and turn in that video on Canvas. That'll be it. All right, next week we're going to move on to something a bit more difficult, but we'll review some of these concepts again. All right, see you later.